There we go. Now it's working. Good morning. Welcome to the Real Estate Appraiser Board meeting. Chair, are you ready to start the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The meeting is called to order at 10:01 a.m. We're going to start the meeting off by reading the notice. Notice of the November 13th, 2023 meeting of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission, including date, time, and location, has been noticed to the Real Estate Appraiser Commission website since May 11th, 2023. Additionally, this month's agenda has been posted on the website since November 3rd, 2023. We're going to go ahead and go into the roll call. Just a gentle reminder to capture everything. Make sure you speak into your mic and it lights up red. Please correct me if I say your last name wrong. Taylor Dever? Vandiver. Thank you. Eric Robinson?
Here.
Brett Mansfield?
Here.
Francie Mello?
Here.
Sandra Tuck?
Here.
Nelson Pratt?
Here.
Dr. Mark Sunderman?
Here.
And Will Haston?
Here.
Excellent. Everyone's present and we have a full quorum. Before we get started, just as a reminder, public comments related to items on the agenda will be allowed at the end. For those present, whether in person or online, that would like to make a comment related to items on the agenda, people that are present should place their name on the sign-in sheet and to keep comments to about 2 to 3 minutes. Right now, it doesn't look like we have anyone present to make comments, but we will adjust if someone does come in. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Before we take a vote on that, does anyone have any edits or recommendations for the agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have our first motion from Brett Mansfield. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from William Haston. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Moving on to the September minutes. Did everyone get a chance to read those before we make a motion? And does anyone have any edits that they would like to discuss or make? No? May we have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
We have a motion made by Brett Mansfield. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Eric Robinson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the September minutes are approved. Next item are the experience interviews. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read through the list to capture them all and make sure that what we have is correct or fill in anything that needs to be added in. We're going to start with Mr. William Haston. You have Matthew McTire, who you have recommended as yes, and then Erica Payne. Do we have a status on that or to defer?
Ms. Payne and I are still working through some things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haston. We'll reflect that on the next meeting. Moving on to Mr. Brett Mansfield, we have Catherine Dunn and William Gaines with a recommendation of yes. Do you have anything for Josh Couch?
Same. Still working with Mr. Couch there.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. Ms. Francie Mello, we have a recommendation of yes for Courtney Olson. Does that still stay?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Nelson Pratt, we have a defer for Anthony Eaton. Anything for John Cash?
I recommend yes, and I have a scheduled appointment with Mr. Eaton later this week.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Ms. Sandra Tuck, we have recommendations of yes for both Robert Taylor and Dylan Rogers. Does that still stand?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Taylor Vandiver, did I get that right? Good. Andrea Wandell, recommendation of yes. Is that still correct?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you guys so much. All right. With that, do we have a motion to accept the panel as so and recommended?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Mansfield. May we get a second?
Second.
Who was that? We have a second from William Haston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the experience interviews are approved. Next item on the agenda is the education report. Dr. Sunderman, thank you as always for taking the time to review the education report. It's very much appreciated. Do you have anything you'd like to add or mention before we move on to the vote?
No.
Well, given that this is your report, it is your first motion. Do we have a second for the education report?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Mansfield. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the education report is approved. The only item for the director's report is the budget. So if you go to that, we're going to be starting with the expenditures, and after that, we'll go to the surplus and deficit report. Starting with the expenditures report, if you would put your attention to the FY 22-23 column, which is on the far right, you're going to scroll down a bit into the expenditures, that first highlighted portion, and you will see a grand total of expenditures at $760,000. It's a little more than the previous fiscal year, but not far off. If you continue to go down the page about 10 or 11 lines, the next highlighted portion, you will see a net revenue at $907,000, which leaves us with a fiscal year balance of $147,000. That in turn put our reserve balance at $3.2 million, so we have quite a healthy reserve sitting there. If you go to the second page of the budget report, that's our surplus and deficit, reflecting the months of July through September. In total, we have a revenue of $189,000 and $132,000 in appraiser expenses, which gives us a net of $56,000. So we're doing good in terms of surplus and deficit. I did want to point out a particular note in September, if you can make your way over to that column. It's about halfway down, but you're going to see a deduction there of $16,000. We put in an inquiry to accounting to see what that was. Since that did trend up a little bit, we have not gotten a response yet, but it's suspected to be a core expense. If it comes back with anything unusual, we'll let you know, but we're suspecting a core account issue there. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the budget report? None? Excellent. We're at the portion for public comments. I don't see anyone that walked in. Alex, did anyone pop in online? Andrea Wandell, do you have any comments or questions for the board? You're online. We see you on Teams. All right. Excellent. All right. Well, that puts us to the legal report, which is going to be taken over by Anna and Taylor. Anna, before we go into the legal report, is there anything you need to put out prior to? All right. It's all yours, Taylor.
Okay. Good morning. Before we get started, are there any that you guys would like to discuss first or group together?
I had 1, 2, and 3 were all recommendations to dismiss by council.
Yes.
Yeah. So 1 through 3, I don't know if we'd like to group those together.
Okay, yeah, and then number 2, we're gonna have to vote on a separate. So I'm gonna do 1 and 3 together, and then we'll do 2 separate as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the complaint numbers into the record. Number 1 is 2023031391, and number 3 is 2023032841. Somebody wants to make a motion to accept those?
I'll make a motion to accept council's recommendation of dismissal.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is passed.
Okay, and then number 2 is 2023032231. Someone wants to make a motion for that one as well.
Make a motion to dismiss.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed.
Okay, and then I'll just give a brief overview of the rest of them, and we can go handle those each individually. Number 4 is 2023-030311. In this one, complainant explains they contacted respondent for both a date of death appraisal and a current appraisal for a property that they inherited from their father. Complainant alleges that respondent used inappropriate comparables and adjustments in both reports, and that respondent did not reach back out to them after they contacted them with questions. Respondent explains that when they were out of town, they received a call from complainant, and when they returned back to town, that they had received this complaint, and so they did not feel it was appropriate to contact complainant after that. They say that they stand by both their reports and believe they accurately reflect the market at each time. Respondent explains that had complainant given them a little bit more time, they would have reached out to them and reviewed the reports with them. An expert review was conducted. The expert found that the report did not include any obvious recognition of the various characteristics of the 3 distinct parcels. The reviewer explained the scope of the work should have reasonably included the sales matching attributes of the 3 parcel types. That is the only violation that the expert found. So based on the minimal violations found, counsel was recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to those findings. Questions for that one?
Make a motion that we accept council's recommendations in this case.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
We'll get into number 5, which is 2023-039111. In this complainant is alleging that they believe they may be the victim of home appraisal discrimination by respondent. They say that they do not believe respondent's appraisal report was accurate and an accurate reflection of the home's value, and that they do not believe that comparables chosen were truly comparable to the subject property. Complainant explains that when they received the appraisal from respondent on August 7, 2023, they immediately reached out to their mortgage company to express their concern about their report. They stated that they submitted 3 additional comparables for respondent to consider, but respondent refused to do so. They said at that point they began to believe that there may be some bias included in the respondent's report. They explained that the square footage was not correct and that they believe that respondent knocked over some photos up in their upstairs loft area when conducting the appraisal. Respondent explains that them and their trainee arrived to the property on August 3rd, 2023 and started the observation part of the appraisal process. They said they greeted the homeowners and proceeded up the stairs to measure the second floor, and that they accidentally knocked over some of the pictures and books that were situated on a desk when measuring the wall. Respondent explains that this was accidental and a common during the measuring process, and they immediately picked up the items and put them back as they were. Respondent states that they believe that their appraisal was supported and that their client was the mortgage company and not complainant, and that is who they spoke with. They say that they believe that they researched the property's value correctly and that the information they had was supported. And then an expert review was conducted. The expert found the only credible use path violation to be Standard Rule 1.4. They found that overall the appraisal appears credible, and that the expert notes that the cost approach omitted a depreciation allowance through the home, which was approximately 2 years old, which would violate Standard Rule 1.4. But they found that the appraisal was credible. As such, counsel was just recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to those relevant use path violations.
Make a motion to accept the council's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Okay, number 6 is 2023-042991. In this, complainant is a building company and the owner of the subject property. They are alleging that respondent did not spend enough time at the property to properly appraise the subject. They allege that the report included multiple errors. Specifically, the square footage was reported about 21 square feet incorrectly, and that respondent listed the driveway as having the capacity to hold 2 vehicles when it's an oversized driveway that can hold 6 vehicles. Respondent states that they inspected the above referenced property, that they measured the property and inspected both the interior and exterior personally. They explained that the property was gutted and fully renovated with many quality features and materials for the size. They note the driveway was oversized and gravel. And they explained that they believe that the quality and condition rating is accurate for the appraisal and that all comparables utilized in the sales comparison approach are of similar quality and condition of the subject property. An expert review was conducted. The expert found that some descriptive data was incorrect in the improvement section, but correct in the work field notes. The expert found, as such, respondent violated standards rules 1.1. Based on the minimal violations and respondent's lack of history, counsel is recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to the aforementioned use path violations.
I make a motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Number 7 is 2023-043061. Complainant is the property owner, and they state respondent appraised their condo on July 25th, 2023. They explained the closing was scheduled for August 18th, 2023, and that they received the appraisal on August 16th, 2023. Complainant states respondent was not impolite or rude during the appraisal. However, upon review, they identified several errors with the report. Specifically, complainant points to respondent using a comparable that sold 368 days before the appraisal, and that is not in the area. They further allege that respondent included inaccurate statements in the report pertaining to the updates in the subject property, and that respondent misstated the square footage. Complainant also alleges that based on these errors, that respondent failed to provide an accurate appraisal. Respondent states that they completed the inspection on the subject property on July 25th, 2023, and after completing the market analysis, they discovered the estimated value was coming in below the contracted price. They said at that time they initiated the Tidewater process as required by the VA. They clarified that they requested comparable sales that supported the contract price from the agent through the lender. They explained, however, they never received a response, and as such, they proceeded to submit the appraisal. They explained that a few days after they submitted the report, they received a call from the agent asking for information on how they arrived on their final value conclusion. Specifically, the agent requested information pertaining to the comparable section. Respondent states they told the agent they were not legally allowed to discuss the appraisal process with a third party, and if there are any concerns about the report, it should pass through the lender. They explained they utilized 5 comparable sales from the development and 1 comparable from outside the development. They said that they gave their rationale in choosing the comparables in the sales comparison summary of the report, and that they personally carried out the physical measurement of the subject property and represented the result of the sketch in the attached appraisal report. An expert review was conducted. The expert found the following violations. They found violations within the sales comparison approach section. They found that the respondent had not addressed the subject's end unit/corner location. They found that the respondent did not address that the subject is located near the front of the community in the appraisal, and that the respondent included in the summary analysis in the appraisal addressing the inclusion and reasoning behind the use of a 2-bedroom sale, and stated no functional utility adjustment could be extracted from the market for this feature. The reviewer found this to be questionable as the difference in the functionality utility merited more analysis to ensure the appraiser's opinion to not apply to adjustment was credible. They found that this was in violation of use PAP standards 1.2, 1.4, 2.1a, 2.1b, and 2.2x5. They found that the investigator notes that respondent stated in their response that when they became aware of the disparity between the appraised value and the pending contract price, they initiated the VA's Tidewater policy and made their client aware of the value versus pending contract disparity. However, respondent did not receive any additional sales data to consider in support of the contract price within the 2 days as required, and that they submitted their report. The expert found no issues with that, and they found that the expert explains that while the appraisal does not reflect noncompliance with the identified standard rules addressed above, it is in the reviewer's opinion that the cited missing or incomplete analysis does not rise to the level of a standard rule 1.1b violation, that the appraised value appears adequately supported by the data. As such, as well as respondent's lack of history, counsel was recommending a letter of instruction pertaining to the aforementioned use PAP violations.
Question. So the reviewer thinks there could be issues, but then later doesn't think that there are any.
Yeah, they noted that these things under the sales comparison approach could be considered violations, but that overall the report was supported and credible, and so they just found these were potential problems, potential issues of areas of issues. So that's why I kind of was wanting to do a letter of instruction still, just to kind of point them to where the expert was finding potential problems at.
Yeah, I'm not sure any of those, in my opinion, are use PAP violations, but I guess as a whole, potentially. So the letter of instruction is just not on the record warning.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's probably fair in this case. I'll make a motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Number 8 is 2023-044851. In this, complainant states they feel that respondent is offering valuation services in their YouTube videos and that they do not believe respondent holds an appraisal license. Respondent states in their YouTube videos they upload they offer home valuation information, but in this not, I'm sorry, that should read but not in the sense of an appraisal instead of but in the sense of the appraisal. Respondent states they are just using the term valuation. Respondent explains that they never mention the term appraisal in their videos and are solely based on educating consumers. They said they are just trying to prepare consumers to enter the market competently and that their only goal is to be an advisor. This is just another one, just a letter of instruction, just reminding them of the rules pertaining to unlicensed activity, just to kind of put them on notice. But again, it doesn't count as formal discipline or anything like that.
It doesn't sound like that they're actually performing
Yeah,
valuation
no, it
services,
doesn't. Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's why I just want to put them on notice so they know going forward to not kind of veer off of what they're doing.
Is the respondent that they out of state,
No, they're in state.
in state?
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept the council's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Number 9 is 2023-028381. In this, complainant states they filed their complaint due to concerns that respondent is completing appraisal reports without active insurance. Respondent states that they have deep regret for their mistake in allowing their E&O insurance to lapse. They say that they were between a rock and a hard place when their insurance lapsed and explained that from the end of June 2022 to the end of June 2023, their business lost about $100,000. Respondent explains that one of their trainees who has been employed with them for 7+ full years had to take a 50% pay cut last July, and that they have since become compliant and have caught up on their outstanding bills and renewed their E&O insurance. Respondent explains that they completely understand the degree of their mistake and vow not to let their insurance lapse again. They say they were between their E&O insurance payment and all the other bills and felt it was their only decision. They expressed that they know that they have let their 2 trainees down and that their mistake will also affect them, and that they communicate that they are apologetic for their mistake. Council was recommending a letter of warning pertaining to respondent's failure to maintain their E&O insurance.
Question. Is the complainant, do you know or can you say if it's a lender or a competitor?
I do not believe they provided any information about how they became interacted with the respondent, but let me check the complaint just to double check that.
Okay.
Do you know the letter of warning in 2017, what that related to?
I can pull that up too. So this was pertaining to their previous letter was actually a letter of instruction, but I know it's noted on here, the letter of warning, but I have the actual letter up. It's a letter of instruction pertaining to 2 separate USPAP violations, 11B and 22A. For an appraisal that they completed in 2017.
So this is a letter of warning that you're
Yes.
recommending. And is that's a state law that you have to have insurance? Is that, what exactly did they violate?
Let me pull up the exact complainant is from a more.
Going to be my question also. Is it a requirement that you have to have E&O insurance?
Yeah, it is a requirement. We're pulling up the statutes right now just to get a little bit more information for you. 1 second, sorry. Well, actually, we do not require them to have it, so on that, I would note that we should just dismiss this complaint. I would change my recommendation to dismiss this complaint.
I don't think it's a very good business decision not to have insurance.
Yeah,
but anyway.
we were under the belief that it was required, but looking into this, we cannot find an exact rule pointing to it, so yeah, I'd like to change my recommendation to dismiss this complaint.
I make a motion that we accept this recommendation to dismiss.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and number 10 is 2023030061. This is another one of the complaints that were administratively open after the after the respondent failed to submit their AMC panel report for the 2022 year, and I'm just recommending a letter of caution, which is how we've handled all the previous ones.
Could you run through? I know that we probably ask this every commission meeting. I know letter of instruction is not on their file permanently. Letter of warning is. What is a letter of caution?
We're just pulling up the list. All right, the letter of cautions are kind of a separate thing that we don't use as often, so I just want to make sure we pull up the ASC to just give you the exact information of how it's reported. They do not appear in the National Registry.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept council's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Okay. And number 11 is 2023035531. Complainant states that they are an AMC and that they hired respondent to complete an appraisal on a property. They explain that the report contained the appraiser's signed appraiser's certification indicating that they had completed a complete interior and exterior inspection of the subject property. They allege, however, that respondent did not complete the physical appraisal of the property, rather that a trainee completed the inspection. Respondent states they explained to complainant prior to appearing at the property that two people would be at the appraisal. They say on the day of the appraisal, they were running late and instructed their trainee to go into the home and speak with the homeowner. Respondent states that once arriving, they reviewed the work/photos already completed by the trainee and uploaded to their shared server. They state they took notes and measurements once they arrived at the property and assessed all notes and pictures that the trainee had already uploaded. They said their trainee has the competency and necessary hours to inspect properties independently. However, they continue to accompany their trainee in all inspections and will continue to do so. Respondent explains they believe this is the best training course. They explained that this was an isolated incident where they did not complete the interior inspection with the trainee and only the exterior inspection. They clarified that they informed their client, the AMC, that they were not involved in the interior inspection and that the certification/signature was an oversight not caught before the final report was submitted initially, and that they resubmitted the report with clarification. They said that they do not intend to mislead anyone and apologize for their mistake. They say they have consistently reached out to counsel to ensure that they are compliant with the investigation, that the commission has all the needed documentation and information from respondent. I was just kind of recommending you guys discuss this one and how you want to move forward.
I have a question. Is the complainant the same in both instances, or is it the 2022 complaint is somebody different?
Let me look that up. Off the top of my head, they're different, but I'm just going to double check for you. They're different. The complainant in the first one was an internal open complaint.
The 22 complaint, do we know to what extent the unlicensed trainee was performing work?
I'll pull up that folder and look into what was discussed at the meeting. Okay, so this one was the previous one in 2022. It was an administratively open complaint. It was open after a respondent submitted a notarized property inspection affidavit on January 21, 2022 for their trainee. However, the complainant states the submission was made by respondent prior to trainee's initial licensure date of February 3, 2022. And that on January 21, 2022, respondent's trainee was not a licensed registered trainee. The respondent was not an authorized sponsor of the trainee at the time. Respondent answered the complaint, and they said that they inadvertently filled out the primary sponsor affidavit for the property inspections paperwork instead of the initial sponsor affidavit paperwork for the trainee that they are now sponsoring. Respondent states they did not realize they were certifying that their trainee had completed their hours rather than completing the initial sponsor affidavit paperwork.
So this individual has signed two certifications that are incorrect within the past year. I don't think the letter of warning doesn't seem like it got their attention. We've had this in the past. I can't quite remember, but I think this kind of crosses into a civil penalty, in my opinion. That and maybe we require this individual to retake the supervisor trainee class. I think it's a 4-hour class. What's the penalty per instance civil penalty that I know there's
$1,000.
$1,000
0 to 1,000, up to
0
1,000.
to 1,000.
Yeah.
I'll let anybody else speak on it, but that would kind of be where I'd be leaning at this point.
I have a question. It says complainant states they are filing their complaint to fulfill mandatory reporting requirements. What is
Yeah,
that?
they wrote that on there. It just was kind of paraphrasing what they wrote in their complaint. They said that they felt like they had to report this due to.
If this person was the trainee licensed in this case that we're looking at today.
Yes.
Well, besides signing the document incorrectly, what was their problem? I mean, if this licensee had the ability to do the inspection by themselves, was it just the fact that he signed it
Yes.
incorrectly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so they signed
And
it
it's
correctly.
corrected, right?
They did say that they corrected it. Yes. But
It has to
to
do
the
with
chairman's point, this is the second instance that they've had of signing an affidavit incorrectly as an oversight.
a lot of these mortgage companies or AMCs won't allow a trainee to sign the report, and so it sounds like he's sending the trainees out to look at the property and then signing it saying that he looked at it. So that's how I interpret it.
I believe when they said mandatory reporting, I believe they meant within their company's mandatory reporting requirements.
But it does say that he did show up during the inspection, isn't that right?
The respondent did show up during the inspection, but did not complete an interior review of the home.
Anybody have any thoughts?
You know, my initial thought was the supervising trainee seminar. Recommending that be taken. That was my initial thought as well on that. I don't know if anybody has any discussion on that, but that was kind of, what I was initially thinking was that 4-hour CE class of supervising trainees.
Mel, will you make sure you speak in your microphone?
Sorry, the speak button's not on. There you go. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I agree with the gentleman, Mr. Mansfield and Mr. Pratt, that failure to supervise properly will eventually affect the trainee as well. So a refresher would be in order.
Does anybody have any opinions on a civil penalty on top of that? Is it needed? I mean, it seems to me that we've tried to get this individual's attention and maybe have not, but I would be open to.
It does say that he caught the mistake before the final report was submitted initially, and that they resubmitted the report with clarification. So I think he knew that he'd made a mistake and corrected it.
Look at just this situation, and we don't consider the previous violation. I don't think it rises to the civil penalty level. If you're combining them both, then maybe so. But I'd say looking at this as an isolated situation, I would say no on the civil.
Does anybody want to put a motion on the floor?
Are we talking about a letter of warning and the 4-hour?
If we
take
do
the
the course,
4-hour?
it would be a consent order.
Okay.
Make a motion to do a consent order for this individual to retake the 4-hour training supervisory course.
And on there, how long you're wanting them to have to be able to complete this course, and if it's above their continuing education requirements as well.
How long would that be? I mean, as far as how far out would that be until you go over that period where you have to do the requirement?
We typically give them 180 days to complete the requirement.
180 days, yeah. You have to,
Typically do in addition.
in addition to their CES.
So we have a motion on the floor for him to retake the supervisor trainee 4-hour course with the consent order within 180 days. Is there a second for that?
Second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
And that is the completion of the legal.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Anna. So that moves us over to new business. Is there any new business that the board has?
Oh, I'm holding it down. Okay, I got it. Basically, the Aero conference I attended with Glenn in Salt Lake City, and the hot topics were essentially fair housing, which we've all been well versed in the upcoming requirement next year, I believe it is, for all of us to take a fair housing class and pass an exam. And the next hot topic was Fannie Mae's exclusionary verbiage. And the bottom line on that is they're not going to release a list of the words because they feel as if appraisers will focus on the word itself rather than the context. They're going to continue to modify, add to, and delete words that they consider to be exclusionary. Based on conversations with other regulators in the regulatory board meeting, they are all receiving similar tips, and Fannie Mae terms them a tip and not a complaint when it's just a reference to an exclusionary word. So the various boards had various experiences dealing with the Fannie Mae tips coming in. And I feel like they're still going to continue to come in probably at the same rate. Some states had received none at all, but others had received several. And in the AMC, I attended one of the AMC portions of the meeting, and he had a list of 159 words that he scans every report for. And then he goes and manually decides whether or not they meet the criteria. So that took up the bulk of the meeting, was the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac presentations on bias. And they touched on the PREA that Ms. Tuck brought up at the last, when they went to the Aero conference, and it was essentially the same. It's just in the beginning stages, and it seems to be working well, where you can do a non-traditional path to licensure. And I think that pretty much is a summation of all that went on.
You mentioned PREA, so I'm probably, if it's okay with you, I was just going to expand on a couple more points on PREA, just to give you some of the, for those of us that are nerds and like the data, well, I'll give you some of that. There's 3 programs under development right now. It's just licensed appraiser. They've only got 1 licensed real estate appraiser approved since May. So we're not going to look at they've only got 50 registrants, of which 3 of those are Tennesseans. So we're not looking at a flood of applicants. And, as you know, it's going to take a while for those to kind of trickle in. Thank you for covering the valuation bias, and we're going to be watching that for a while. I think that's just sort of, they've been beating that drum for a while. So there was one other thing that I think is interesting was the PAL Act. This is the first I've heard of it. It's a Portal for Appraisal Licensing Act of 2023. That's House of Representative Bill 2771 and Senate Bill 2692. We're just keeping an eye on it. I mean, it's basically modeled off of NMLS, and it's how they build it was it's a payment of all license, certification, and registration fees and deliveries to the state agencies. It's basically the repository for licensure. All the FBI background checks will happen there. You can logs, qualifying, education, all of it will be right there. They're going to have tabs for all of that. See, basically a stop shop, for the whole deal, the whole bag. I have not seen it. I don't think anybody has, so, more on that. We'll keep an eye on it. One thing that they reiterated is, this is them reiterating, and we'll see about it. We'll stress test it, but they said there's no effect on states' rights. States shall retain the liability to act independently upon license, certification, and registration applications or no appraiser management. It sounds like they're just, and if it's what they're billing it to be, that that there's some utility there, so there's some usefulness there. We see that over in collections and licensing, real estate having that repository to also share information. So that would be good, that flow of information coming back and forth among all the jurisdictions. So that was it, PAL Act, and thank you for covering PREA. But I was surprised with PREA too. I was expecting sort of a flood of applicants, and that's a trickle.
Nancy, is there any other new business? Nope. Chair, would you like to adjourn?
Do we need a motion?
No, we already
Okay.
approved the agenda.
We will adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned at 10:46. Thanks, guys.